So, Richard Browning, founder, chief test pilot for Gravity Industries. Thank you very much for giving us your time, and thanks for joining us on Air Sports News.
My pleasure to be here.
It's a real treat for me, somebody that's been following aviation since I was 5 years old, going to the airport, plane spotting, becoming a skydiver, becoming a professional skydiver, and now presenting about air sports. This is a real treat for me. Now, for you, Richard, what you've done, a new development in human flight, you were really destined to do this. It was in your family with your late father, and was it your grandfather as well with the helicopters?
Yeah, both grandfathers are guilty of being very much in this world. Yes, indeed. Yeah, one's Sir Basil Blackwell. He used to run Westlands, now Leonardo, and my other grandfather was a wartime aviator and then civil pilot after that. So yeah, it's very much run in the family.
So what we're going to get to towards the end is talk about this fascinating, new, exciting, possible air sport, the Gravity Air Races. But before that, I want to wind it all the way back and talk about how this began. You were an oil trader, you had this idea, you went out to do it. Everybody said it was impossible, it was going to rip your arms off, and you tried it anyway.
Yeah, I spent 16 years with BP actually in London. I spent about 6 years alongside that in the Royal Marines Reserve as well. But throughout that time, I never really, I suppose, ever lost that spirit of getting excited over unusual challenges and getting very used to spending a lot of time not achieving those challenges, which anybody who tries to innovate or pioneer anything becomes familiar with. So yeah, what I've done with Gravity is not entirely out of character, but yes, it is quite an audacious, I suppose it was quite an audacious assumption that I had back then, to think that there was a tiny chance that I could kind of reimagine how human beings could fly by very much, this is very important, this is the ethos I kind of started with, trying to leverage the human brain from a balance and control point of view. You know, even walking around is quite a ridiculous feat when you think about it. But then add on to that just enough horsepower that you could still manage it, but you could obviously, get off the ground and fly around. And yeah, that was the starting point. And it I suppose, very much was always going to be a journey of myself with one or two other people, at least initially, trying to just quietly, without really telling too many people, experiment as safely as we could do through all the assumptions that people would have around the gyroscopic effects that were, 120,000 RPM. You'd think that'd be like the gyroscopic effect of a bicycle wheel, for instance, of fighting you, and whether you have to have counter-rotating turbines if you can have two on each arm, and whether the force, like you said, is going to rip your arms off, or the heat's going to be a problem, or you can't carry enough fuel. And there's loads of these reasons why this shouldn't work. But you know what? Underneath every set of assumptions that says it's stupid or ridiculous or doesn't work is usually lurking, sometimes lurking a breakthrough. And we kind of accidentally meandered our way back in 2016 into exactly that.
When you took that first iconic, everybody's seen the clip, that first 6-second flight, tell me how that felt. And secondly, did you know that was coming? You were building up for it, or was it more of a surprise? How did you feel?
Yeah, so and you can see a lot of this on YouTube. If you look for Gravity Industries on YouTube, you can see a lot of this. That was the culmination of, only about 8 months of constant experimenting, trying engines in different positions and working how you control them. Should you have like throttle control for all of them and play them like some sort of crazy accordion? Or actually, as we realized, if you vector thrust control, you can do that in a far more instantaneous and fine way. But all of these things, obvious now, at the time weren't obvious at all. But you're right, back in November 2016, that very first wobbly-legged flight with an engine on each leg, ludicrously, and two on each arm, I kept on being tantalized by enough evidence that this could work, but trying to learn to balance it with no rule book. And in those days, we train loads of clients to do this now, but they have a tether, so they're completely safe and they can relax into it. But back then, I didn't have a tether, so every learning moment it ended up being me lifting off the ground and then having two voices, one saying, "Oh my God, it's working, stick with it, come on, try and learn in the moment." And the other voice would be going, "Oh my God, land, you're gonna go too high, you're gonna break something, etc." So trying to balance those voices was pretty tough. But that 6-second flight, that was a culmination of a few weeks before then, getting tantalizingly close to being able to manipulate and control it. But there was a real, massive moment. That 6 seconds land, I spun around and grinned at the camera. It's a very grainy, kind of old iPhone clip. I just kind of knew, I'd felt it, and it started to feel natural. And I realized that this was just the beginning of what could be infinitely improved. So it was quite a profound moment. It very much wasn't, as some people suggest, I build it quietly for ages, never test it, strap it on and press go. It was that cumulative effect of like one engine, two engines jumping around, then four. And so I'd had the warm up in that sense. But unlike my clients now or my team, when they're training, they at least know it's possible. And also we've got a bunch of mechanisms to help them do it. Looking back was quite mad going down that journey, not knowing whether this would ever work or not. But yeah, anyway, luckily it worked out.
I mean, it's fascinating what you've done. It really is mind-blowing. From my field of skydiving, the first people in free fall trying to work out how to control their body.
Yeah,
but
very similar.
And now somebody can get in a wind tunnel and within 2 minutes can get stable flight. What you went through a whole new, developing a new way of flying, which has not been done for such a long period of time. You've put the path down there. And now your guys can learn to fly in how long? In a couple of hours flight, they can be in control.
Yeah, I mean, if you really add up the sort of air time, it's kind of ludicrous and doesn't sound ridiculous. It doesn't sound believable. I mean, one of my team, he is a GB team gymnast, and it's not a strength thing. We've trained 70-year-old women to do this, and men, 70-year-old women, not being discriminatory. So clients can learn this really quickly because of how we've now adjusted the angles of the engine. They actually lift themselves. It really is not difficult. But back in the day, and still with quite a crude version of the suit, we had a quite ridiculous situation where this guy, Ryan, came along and he'd seen, I'd worked out the gymnasts, I thought, from a balance and coordination and frankly, a calmness perspective, to execute some of the maneuvers they do where they know they could land on their head and seriously hurt themselves. Their ability to calmly execute instructions is almost second to none. So I explained what to do. I showed him one demo. He got in the suit and just doesn't sound even to me believable, this. Literally within 3 minutes, he was flying around and we actually took him off the tether. By then we had a very crude tether. No one else learned off the with no tether other than me. We literally took him off it and he was just, I've got the old clip of it. And in fact, you know what? I should do a little YouTube of this because it's such a remarkable thing. But people will just think I've cut out hours of him learning. But no, genuinely, just got it. The best analogy is if you watch children learn to ride bikes. Yes. Picture this, brother and sister, one older, one younger. The older one, agonizing, being watched by the parents, hold the back of the saddle, they have a wobble, they fall off, hurt their knee. Next time there's more pressure and there's a bit of pain involved and they're a little bit worried and they're just like being a pilot or a skydiver, they're overthinking it.
Yes.
Yet the younger brother or sister, without anybody watching, just picks up this funny thing called a bike and just rolls around the lawn, starts pedaling a bit, and then parents look up, like that afternoon and go, oh, you're riding a bike. And they look at you like, oh, was I supposed to learn that? And it's that wonderful difference between picking up something that's intuitive and you relax and it's joyful and you actually just hand the keys over to your subconscious.
Yeah.
But very much like a pilot when they're just looking out of the window and then they couldn't tell you what they're doing with their hands, right? And the same with you skydiving. You're not consciously thinking what you're doing. You're just living it and thinking about where you want to go and what you want to do. You see this with jet suit learning within minutes. Even our seemingly least capable clients with no experience at all, within about 7 to 8 goes, and each go is only 90 seconds, they are usually able to, still with the tether there just in case, they're able to kind of crudely fly around. It's ludicrous. It's all credit to the human brain, really.
I mean, this is a big part of what you do on an ongoing basis with your Gravity Industries, isn't it? As well as the development, you've got your client experience. This is something you've been building for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, really just born out of people who've seen us at the events we've done. I mean, we before COVID struck, we had topped out at about 103 events in 30 countries. Because all this equipment, there's some of it behind. There's one suit sitting there, for instance. That all packs into 2 check-in suitcases, ludicrously enough. So you can just travel anywhere in the world and deliver an event. That's been a massive accidental kind of benefit to what we built. But we just left a trail of people around the world saying, look, I've got to have a go. How do I learn to do this? And so in response to that, we set up a place in the UK and also in California where people with that tether system can learn in a safe, controlled way to do this. And we're actually in the process, thanks to the COVID situation, we have a little more time on our hands. We're setting up hopefully a training rig actually at the Goodwood estate. We know the folks there. I mean, I can't guarantee it's definitely going to go as big as we want, but it's all boding pretty well. It's better than the training site we have near to our own base here in Wiltshire. People come along and spend a day with us and usually by the end of it, they can fly. And often if people come back for a second day, ideally not consecutive, so they can just let it sink into their brain, then usually that second day they're flying around without the tether. Again, only like 5-6 feet off grass, and eventually you want to get over water. Then if you make a mistake, it does cause a bit of damage to the equipment, but the person's completely fine.
What's happened with your calendar for this year? I would imagine you had a lot of events worldwide in place which have been decimated.
Yeah, we had loads. We were supposed to do a private event for Jeff Bezos. We had another one even for Elon Musk as well. We had loads, and they kept on getting bigger and bigger in all these crazy places around the world. Yeah, unsurprisingly, they all just went on pause, which is a bit of a shame. Our client training as well, we put on pause. I mean, the kind of big disappointment was we had this inaugural jet suit race that we were launching in Bermuda for March, and we put a lot of our own effort into that to kind of set that up as our own event, and that's all on pause. There's a shipping container sitting in Bermuda right now with a lot of our gear in it. Luckily not jet suit gear, but a lot of the race clock lights and obstacles and things, they're all sitting out there. So I think realistically we're probably going to be on for 2021 by the time this COVID thing keeps playing out. But actually, we're a very diverse company. We've got a lot of military activity going on. We've got tons of R&D going on. I've actually really enjoyed getting back to doing the R&D with my team. They've all been remote. In fact, we've been communicating through this kind of medium an awful lot. But we've tested the next generation of suit. In fact, there's an enormous one lurking in the corner back there that it lifts another 50 kilos more than the current one. And so it's good. I think like everybody else, we don't want this to last a huge amount longer, or the damage to the wider economy is going to be just terrible. But yeah, we luckily are quite robust.
Yeah, a lot of people that I've been speaking to in air sports have said that it's been a time which has been used wisely. It's been welcomed almost because it's allowed to calm down, research a little bit.
Yeah, I think the best you can do is just adapt, right? And you just take advantage of the time to do all the things that you never get around to, especially in these kind of industries where, you know, our summers used to be back to back, getting on planes, going around to different events. And it was almost ridiculous. I'd look forward to the autumn where the events calm down and we could get back to doing the R&D and things like the wing development stuff. I'm fascinated by the transition to aerodynamic flight and then back out again, kind of Harrier and F-35 style. That's how we set the last world record. And yeah, given the choice, I'd spend more time doing this kind of stuff than actually just doing another 103 events.
So you were looking at, with the development, the wingsuit type development with the leg vanes, and then you're having the rigid wing on the back. Which way are you going with it now?
Right, so the headline strategy here is that if you can fly around using vectored thrust, 2 engines on each arm, 1 on the back, and you're blowing enough air downwards to go upwards, it makes sense that if you blow it slightly backwards, then you go forwards. And we've done, 40, 50 miles an hour like that, which is pretty fun. But you are vectored thrust flying. You're like flying a Harrier with just the swivelly nozzles and no wings. Once you go above, as you know, about 30 miles an hour or so, you start to get a useful airflow. Yes. And so you might as well stick some little airfoils out and start generating lift using the airflow rather than just vectored thrust. And we started experimenting with it. And actually the easiest go-to solution so far has been a leg wing. Because a leg wing, like in your world, you can turn it on and off. You can open and close your legs. It's got ram air scoops. It turns into a crude aerofoil, and guess what? It lifts your legs up. And as soon as you lift your legs up, A, they're out of the airflow, so they don't cause quite so much drag. But also the rear engine is now starting to point backwards rather than downwards. Right. Its lift component is replaced by the wing, and its energy is starting to be used for propulsion. And so just with that alone, we managed the 85 miles an hour last year for the world record. Now, my upper body is still somewhat leaning on the arm engines, which is fine, but they're not only in the airflow in an unhelpful way, but also I'm having to use them to support my upper body with the thrust. If you could sprout, choose your mechanism, Buzz Lightyear or Scissor or whatever you like, if you sprout little airfoils in the upper body that are just big enough to generate enough lift at a given speed to take away the necessity for vector thrust from your arms, you can sweep your arms back. And you're now in the realm of proper superhero stuff, but you are actually lying flat, now vectoring entirely backwards. And you have a choice. You either dial the power down and save a huge amount of fuel and sit at a cruise speed of more like your world if you want, 80, 120 miles an hour. Yeah. Or you actually don't dial the speed down, the power down, and you're just going to go really, really fast. We're talking 140 odd kilos of thrust for an frontal air profile of my head and shoulders. So you don't probably want option B. You probably want to go for option A. So that's the bit that really fascinates me, and we've pushed this a lot, but not so much the upper body, because we found actually ludicrously the biggest problem with the upper body is you just generate so much lift, you just go into a huge climb. Yeah. And the only way to arrest yourself out of it, because we don't have elevators, is actually to sweep your arms forward, vector forwards, drop out of the airflow and go back into VTOL again. And then the funny thing is, having dialed the power down as you started to accelerate, you have to really remember to dial it back in again, because when you go into VTOL, suddenly you just drop like a stone because you didn't have so much power dialed in. So the whole world of that, as you can probably tell from my animated description, is fascinating because no one really has done this in such a seat of the pants way. You know, the Harrier and the F-35 are bizarrely about the closest analogy, and we're stuffed full of ex-Harrier and F-35 pilots in our wider team, which is a real privilege.
How many are in your team now? How many people can fly?
So the inner kind of team is about 12, and we've got a wider collaborative team of wonderful people like the former director of the F-35 program, who's an illustrious, very decorated test pilot himself. We have them in our wider team. You know, they're not paid members of the team. They absolutely love just hanging out with us, and it's a privilege to have them part of it, and their knowledge is fantastic. But in terms of pilots, we've got about an inner core team of pilots of about 8 who can fly pretty well. I mean, that's kind of enough most of the time. Yeah. And now, because we've refined this so much with clients, we can train people pretty quickly, especially a bit like any sport. The lighter, younger, fitter, more experienced you are at doing anything like snowboarding, cycling, whatever, it just makes people very quick to learn. But I can steal a capable young skateboarder and get them to fly within a matter of a couple of hours easily. Crazy.
Well, it's incredible. How many equipments do you have now? How many pieces of kit actually?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's 3D printed. I mean, just behind me here. So there's one sitting there. There's another one to the side, and there's actually a sort of rack of 6. One of them is a bit experimental. In fact, I don't know below there. Oh, I'm missing a couple below there. But I've got about 5 of what we call the Mark II suit, which is 2 engines on each arm and 1 on the back, and the one that's done nearly all the events around the world. There's, as I say, an experimental one sitting there. There's a very experimental secret one sitting next to me here, which I can't show you. But we've got about 5, let's say, and that's generally enough for what we need. But because it's all 3D printed, you literally can just, I mean, there's a 3D printer whirring away in the background there, printing an experimental thing for us. But we get a big professional firm with multi-million-dollar machines to print in polymer and aluminium our suits. But, you know, you pay your money, and 2 weeks later, out pops 90% of what you need to, you know, get another suit together. So it's very easy now to produce more of them. So we're really space constrained, and we don't really need more than 5 knocking around at any one time at the moment.
Off the top of my head, I can think of 3 or 4 people from my world and different worlds who would buy these, who would definitely have the means. Have you sold one, or have you sold more than one? We've
sold a couple, actually. We don't. It's not really our main aim, but yeah, and I'll explain that. And it's because we very much insist people come and train with us first, so we can get to know them. I'm the opposite end of the spectrum from just shipping one to Riyadh and seeing on the news somebody just pressed go and, you know, went up to 1,000 feet and had a bad outcome. Yes. I never want that. I didn't build this company for that. Yes. So if people train with us, learn with us, and they really want to take one home, we can do that. And we sold the last one for about $440,000, so about £360,000, something like that, depending on what the exchange rate was. But actually, the model that seems to be preferred by most people is come and train with us and then turn up at our events. The idea was we had a couple of our clients turning up in Bermuda to literally have the equipment prepared, and they just step in and go racing with us. Wow. So, you know, I think the motorsport world and the aviation world has precedent for this. You know, you have a team prepare the equipment and you turn up and jump in and go. And even the Ferrari FFX or FXX or whatever it is, that's the same model. You can't even take that car home. You know, Ferrari carefully prepare it and step back while you probably make a mess. So we're a little bit more inclined that way, but yeah, it is possible.
Well, okay, let's move on now to air sports and this whole new FPV race system that could be in our worlds, well, shortly. Tell us all about it.
Well, actually, so I'll qualify that. So we're building a jet suit race series, and we've just actually put on YouTube a little snippet. To be honest, we filmed what's just gone up on YouTube in one afternoon at Henstridge Airfield, not far down the road from us, when we were filming a quite fun thing to do with flying a Back to the Future hoverboard. That's also on our YouTube as well, if you want to see that. But one of my team is obsessed with Back to the Future, so we thought we'd just film it for fun. But we actually took the opportunity, you know, after 2 months of lockdown, to shoot a very quick 3-pilot kind of sequence. And it's over grass in the corner of an airfield, but you can get some sense of the kind of 2-pilot pylon racing type combative nature of the race. And the idea is over water. You could do it over water in front of you know, every major city in the world. If you think about it, there's a lake, river or seafront in front of every major city pretty much. And you're 20, 30 feet over the water, flying around Red Bull Air Race type pylons, but on a small, very intimate to the audience, very safe. There's no horrendous trajectories like, you know, you had in Red Bull Air Racing. Yeah. So everybody's very safe. And you have a sort of almost real world Marvel-esque like Iron Man and Woman race where humans are very much at the forefront, and literally at the end of every heat, they can land 15 feet in front of the audience on the podiums. So I think we bring, having studied this a little bit, we can bring an element that the Red Bull Air Race struggled with, of bringing the humanity to the live action, sort of like to the audience. And I know that's tough when you've got a little aircraft sort of land 20 miles away. But I think we're going to have all of that visceral, kind of almost barely believable impact that we've very much, I say, proven from doing this all over the world in front of live audiences, but usually as a sort of demo. So that's the race. Bermuda was all set up. We are literally now umming and ahhing whether we do it the back end of this year or probably 2021. We might be doing a short version of this around the UK as a sort of big up the UK support, suffering tourist sites type thing. That's a new idea that's been lurking around. But that's what we're doing, because in a way that it dawned on us that, what's the point of a Formula One car or a Red Bull Air Race plane or an Indy car, let's say, and it is to inspire, it's to entertain and push the frontiers of technology in a really engaging and inspiring way. So we thought, well, judging by the reaction we've had all over the world in front of literally millions of people now, why don't we do the same kind of thing? And it's very portable and actually relatively cost efficient to deliver. Everybody can travel to an event with check-in baggage and deliver the event from check-in baggage. We don't need 20 shipping containers to go ahead of us to settle this up for millions of dollars. So that's the plan. I just quickly pick up on your FPV thing. So it is true that we use FPV drones a lot to get some quite stunning shots. So for people who aren't familiar with those, the little race drones where you have some goggles on, and then if you're less than 25, you can avoid throwing up by watching where the drone's going. And so a lot of my team who are all about that age fly these things, and it's an amazing way of capturing a lot of our, what it's like to fly one of these. And that will be a big part of capturing the excitement of the race. But similar kind of ethos, but this time it's like FPV race, drone racing, but with humans very much at the center of it.
Yes, exactly. So it is inspirational, it's adventure, it's boys own, everything that you could possibly want. My first thought, if this was when I was a kid, I had my $6 million man action figure. Have you looked into action figures yet, Richard?
I would be lying if I said that my team haven't printed various slightly piss take, if I may say, versions of those with our 3D printers, because I've had various scans, so my team, all body 3D scans to do some of the aerodynamic analysis, and they got slightly abused. I think as we build this, yes, I mean, my vision for this is that you eventually have guys and girls who've got previous sporting backgrounds that already have a following and already have a fan base that then graduate on, if you like, when they're sort of semi-retired from their other sport, to come and race jet suits. And I mean, what a great idea to have a literal action figure of an actual guy or girl who is a real person that you aspire to be. And yes, I mean, if people want those eventually of me and my team, then yes, we can cater for that. But and that's the kind of thing you don't want to go and run before you can walk. I think going and publishing your own action figure and finding it doesn't sell is a terrible thing to do. So yeah, it's somewhere on the list, but we don't need to rush to do that yet, I don't think.
Brilliant. So Air Sports News with Air Sports Promotion, they're based in Poland. It comes from Poland, and my boss wouldn't forgive me if I didn't ask you when are you going to Poland, or have you done any demonstrations there yet?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So I've got a little IT business that I part own and is based in Łódź in Poland, actually. So I have fond connections with Poland. We have not done a demo in Poland, though. Out of the 30 countries we've flown in, we haven't done one in Poland yet. So when all these travel restrictions are lifted, if there's a corporate, commercial, private, or even air show type event that can, kindly cover the costs and the fees for us to come out and do it, then we've done Germany a few times, so it's not too far away. But yeah, it would be really fun to come out and do something.
All right, well, I'll get in touch with him, and we'll see what we can do from there. Well, Richard Browning, Gravity Industries, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much for joining us on Air Sports News.
My pleasure.